Three, two, one, and howdy, howdy, I'm back. We left off, we did the Grimness Mall with Odin as Shadowface in The Wanderer. And we are going to continue in the Poetic Edda with Four Skirnis. And this is in, we'll just, this time I think I'm just going to go about 20 pages, which is about 2 or 3 short poems here. And this is the journey of Skirnir on behalf of Froy. And there's no need to give all of the background. Or why not? The next poem, For Skirnir, literally Skirnir's Journey, is also preserved in part in the manuscript where it is called Skirnir's Mal, Skirnir's Words, literally. Read literally, the poem presents an unlovely picture of the god of agriculture, Froy, who sees a beautiful giant woman named Gerth, daughter of Gymir, when he is sitting upon Odin's throne, Hilskoff. Beauty and bright light are stereotypically associated in Old Norse. Hence, the description of Gerth is as literally luminous in stanza 6. Froy sends his messenger Skirnir to convince Gerth to marry him at any cost, and his efforts make up the bulk of the poem. After many threats and curses, Gerth agrees to marry Froy. But she stipulates that Froy must wait 9 nights' time. Skirnir returns to Froy and tells him that he must wait 9 nights, which prompts Froy to close the poem by complaining that he must wait 3 nights. This difference in numbering is perhaps the reflection of an old custom compelling men to wait for a high knot, literally marriage night, which lasted 3 days before they could consummate an agreed marriage. The poem's narrative has been interpreted as an allegory in which Froy, as the god of agriculture, sends the Shining One, which is the literal meaning of Skirnir. The Shining One, somewhat like Lucifer. Perhaps intended to evoke the sun. Or perhaps to invoke the morning star. Anyway, to prepare the thawing earth symbolized by Gerth, whose name may be related to the word for farm, the first sowing at the end of winter. As usual, the prose introduction and insertions are part of how the poem was preserved in the manuscript. So here, as we continue on, is the poem for Skirnir, the Shining One. Froy, a son of Njord, sat on Hilskoff and looked out over all the worlds. He looked into Jotunheim, and there he saw a beautiful woman who walked from her father's house to her own little detached house nearby. He became lovesick from the sight. Froy had a servant who was named Skirnir, and Njord told Skirnir to ask Froy what the matter was. Then Skathi said, "Get up, Skirnir, and go ask our son to talk. Find out who it is who's made him so angry." Skirnir said, "I can expect only bad words from your son if I go and talk with him. If I go to ask him who it is who's made him so angry." Skirnir said, "Tell me, Froy, great among the gods, because I want to know, why are you sitting alone inside the hall all day long, my lord?" Froy said, "Why should I tell you my sorrow, young man? The sun shines all day long, but it does not soothe my longing." Skirnir said, "Lord, I doubt that your longings are so great that you cannot tell me about them. The two of us were young together for a long time ago. We can trust each other. For I said, in Gymir's yard, I saw a beautiful woman walking. Her arms shone so bright, they reflected in all air and sea. That woman means more to me than any woman has ever meant to any young man. But among the gods and elves, there is no one who would bless our marriage. Skirnir said, give me a horse that will carry me through darkness and flame, and give me your sword that fights by itself against enemy giants. Roy said, I'll give you a horse that will carry you through darkness and flame, and I'll give you my sword that fights by itself if it is carried by a wise man. Skirnir said to the horse, it is dark outside, time for us two to ride our dewy mountains, to rush beyond the homes of men. Either we both will come back, or the mighty giant will take us both. Skirnir rode to Gymir's home in Jotunheim. There were fierce dogs chained up outside the fence that surrounded the hall where Gareth lived. Skirnir rode over to where a herder sat on a mound and said to him, tell me, herdsman, sitting on the mound and watching all the roads, how can I get past Gymir's dogs for a chance to talk with the young lady Gareth? The herdsman answered, is this your death day? Or are you already dead? You'll never have a chance for a conversation with Gymir's good daughter. Skirnir said, there's always a better choice than cowardice. If you have business to take care of, one day long ago my life was already shaped and my fate was fixed. Gareth said, what is this noise I am hearing in our halls? The earth trembles and everything shakes in the home of Gymir. A serving girl said, there's a man outside. He has stepped off his horse and he's letting it feed. Gareth said, ask him to come inside into our hall and drink the splendid mead, though I fear that he may be the one who killed my brother. Are you of the Aesir, or the wise Vanir, or one of the elves guest? Why have you come over the great flame to see our home? Skirnir said, I am no elf, nor of the Aesir, nor one of the Vanir, though I have come over the great flame to see your home. I have 11 apples made all of gold. I will give them to you, Gareth, to buy your love, so that you will pledge to live happily with Froy. Gareth said, I would never accept 11 apples as the price for my love for any man, not even for Froy. I will never marry him so long as we live. Skirnir said, I will give you the ring that Odin placed on his young son's funeral pyre. 8, just like it, drop from it every 9th night. Gareth said, I would never accept that ring, even if Odin did place it on his young son's funeral pyre. I have no lack of gold in the home of Gymir to share with my father. Skirnir said, do you see this sword, girl? This slender, pretty sword, which I have in my hand here? I will cut off your head from your neck unless you go along with me. Gareth said, I will never endure the threats of any man. And I think if Gymir finds you here, you brave men will come to blows. Skirnir said, do you see this sword, girl, this slender, pretty sword, which I have here in my hand? Your old father will bend his knee beneath this blade. I'll be the death of your father. I will beat you with a club until I tame you, girl. till you go along with my wishes. Then you'll go to a place where no one will ever see you again. You will sit forever on an eagle's nest, turned away from the world, looking in at hell. Food will seem as awful to you as the Midgard serpent seems to men. You will be laughed at when you emerge. A giant man will look at you. They'll all stare at you. You'll be better known than Heimdall himself staring out behind your gate. Foolishness and screaming and pain, unendurable pain. May your tears grow with your sorrow. Sit down and I will tell you some sad news. I'll double your grief. Monsters will bend you over for the whole unhappy day in Jotunheim. You'll crawl every day without choice, without hope. A hall of frost trolls. You'll weep. You'll never be happy. Your sorrows will make you cry. You'll have a three-headed giant for your husband. You'll go without a husband. You'll go crazy and rot with illness. You'll be fat. A fat thistle, ripped halfway off its stalk and left to dry. I went to a forest to get a young tree branch, to find a magic wand there. I found a magic wand there. Odin will rage at you. Thor will rage at you. Freud will hate you, you evil girl. You have earned the hatred of the gods. Hear me, giants. Hear me, frost trolls. Hear me, fire trolls. Hear me, gods. I curse this girl. I curse her never to know a man's love, never to have a husband. Hrimgrimmir's the name of the troll who will take you. Down below the gates of hell, there below the tree roots, servants will bring you goat's urine to drink. You'll never get anything better to drink, not if you want it, girl. Not even if I want it, girl. I curse you with that troll and 3 other curses. Sexual shame and madness and unbearable suffering. I've cursed you already, but I'll call off the curses if you give me good reason. Gers said, be welcome here instead, and take this drinking horn full of good ancient mead, that I would never marry that god of the Vanir. Skirnir said, I want to know my errand complete before I ride away. Tell me when you'll meet the noble son of Genorth. When will you come to comfort Froy? Yer said, there's a grove named Bari. We both know it, a peaceful place in the forest. After 9 nights, Froy, son of Genorth, will enjoy my love there. Then Skirnir rode home. Froy stood waiting for him and asked for the news. Tell me, Skirnir, before you unsaddle that horse, before you take one more step, what did you accomplish in Jotunheim? For you or my purposes? Skirnir said, there's a grove named Bari. We both know it, a peaceful place in the forest. After 9 nights, Froy, son of Njorth, will enjoy Gerst's love there. Froy said, 1 night would be long enough. 2 would be worse. How can I contain my lust for 3? A month has often seemed shorter to me than half such a marriage night. Thus ends 4 Skirnies. And since that was short, we'll move on to The Taunting of Thor by Odin. The Harvestjoth. Harvestjoth, which literally is Graybeard's song. And how appropriate. Well, my beard's kind of white, but we can pretend it's gray. What did you stumble onto? You had stumbled onto the reading of the Poetic Edda by the Drakenrune Sage. And you can get the crochet dragon hats on my website. I crochet, I do all kinds of stuff. But right now we're just having a good old Yuletide story. So here we go. The Taunting of Thor by Odin. It is a relatively long poem, so I may end after this one, in which Odin, in disguise of the ferryman, Greybeard, denies Thor passage on his ferry. The two exchange heated words that clearly compare and contrast the two gods' deeds, attitudes, and reputations, often ending their respective boasts with the questions, Havat vantu matan, what were you doing meanwhile? Greybeard has come more or less admitted he is Odin, and Thor seems to understand his true identity as well, though he never addresses Greybeard as Odin. In stanza 26, there is a reference to Thor's journey to meet Urgarda Loki, told in the prose Edda, in which Thor and his companions sleep inside the globe of a truly huge giant. Haberschultz appears in both the Codex Regius and the prose introduction is original. So on we go. Haberschultz. Thor was coming back from the east and came to a fjord. On the other side of the fjord was a ferryman with his boat. Thor called out, "Who is that man that stands on the other side of the fjord?" The other man answered, "Who is that man who calls from across the water?" Thor said, "Take me across the water and I'll give you some breakfast. I'm carrying a basket on my back and you'll find no better food. I ate in peace before I left home. I had some herring and goat, and I'm still full from that." The ferryman said, "You're boasting about your breakfast, but you don't know if your homecoming will be glad. I think your mother is dead." Thor said, "You are telling me news that would seem bad to anybody, that my mother is dead." The ferryman said, "You don't look like a man who owns good farms. There you stand barefoot like a beggar, not even a good pair of pants on." Thor said, "Row that boat over here. I'll show you the landing. Who owns that ship that you're on?" The ferryman said, "A man named Hildolf asked me to run the ferry, a wise and provident man who lives in Rayjard. He asked me not to give rides to beggars or horse thieves, only good people, and those I know well. And tell me your name if you want to cross the fjord." Thor said, "I'll tell you my name. I'm no criminal, and I'm from a good family. I am Odin's son, Mali's brother, and Magni's father, warrior of the gods. You're talking to Thor here. Now I'll ask in turn, what is your name?" The ferryman said, "Greybeard is my name. I rarely lie about that." Thor said, "Why would anyone lie about that except to conceal some crime?" Greybeard said, "Whether or not I committed crimes, I'd still want to defend my life against people like you, unless my fated day had come." Thor said, "It seems like a shame for me to wade over there to get you and get my pants wet, but I'll pay you back, slanderer, for these nasty words if I get over this fjord." Greybeard said, "I'll stand right here and wait for you. I think I'll be your toughest enemy since Hrungnir." Thor said, "You want to talk about when I killed Hrungnir, that arrogant giant with a stone head? I knocked him down, I laid him out flat. What were you doing meanwhile, Greybeard?" "I was with Volvar for 5 years on the island called Algron. We were waging war, killing warriors, proving ourselves, and sampling the local ladies." "How did the women treat you?" Greybeard said, "We had girls who liked to kick, but sometimes they would act docile. We had wise women too, and sometimes they were loyal. Some of them wound some thread from a valley out of the sand. I made them all submit to my will. I slept with 7 sisters and had all their charms to myself. What were you doing meanwhile, Thor? And Thor said, I killed Thjasse, the bull giant. I threw the eyes of that son of Alvaldi into the clear sky. Those are the greatest monuments to my deeds, which everyone can see ever since. What were you doing meanwhile, Greybeard? And Greybeard said, great seductions. In the night, I was ridden by women stolen from their husbands. I think Helbarth was a strong giant. He gave me a magic wand, and I enchanted away his wits. Thor said, you repaid him badly for his good gift? And Greybeard said, a tree has only the space it can crowd another out of. Let me read that again. I like that. A tree has only the space it can crowd another out of. Every man must look out for himself. What were you doing in the meanwhile, Thor? And Thor said, I was in the east fighting giants, evil women, who lived in the mountains. There would be many more giants if they had all survived. There would not be a single human left on Midgard. What were you doing in the meanwhile, Greybeard? And Greybeard said, I was in the south, making battles. I turned princes against one another. I never made peace. Odin receives the powerful men who fall in battle, and Thor receives their servants. Thor said, you deal out victory and defeat unfairly if you have so much power over battles. And Greybeard said, you have plenty of strength, Thor, but no courage. Like a prince of cowards. You got stepped on in a glove. You didn't look much like Thor then. You didn't dare sneeze or break wind for fear that the giant Thjalnir might hear you. And Thor said, Greybeard, you sissy, I'll kill you if I get across this fjord. How are you going to get across? You have no transportation. Oh, what were you doing in the meanwhile, Thor? And Thor said, I was in the east guarding a river when Sarong's sons attacked me. They threw stones at me, but they got little out of it. They ended up begging me for peace. What were you doing in the meanwhile, Greybeard? And Greybeard said, I was in the east. Together with a certain lovely someone, I enjoyed myself with that beauty for quite a while. I showed the blonde a good time, and she showed me one. And Thor said, you had a good-looking woman there. And Greybeard said, I could have used your help, Thor. You could have helped me hold that gorgeous girl down. And Thor said, I would have helped you if I had been there. And Greybeard said, I would trust you about that if you hadn't tricked me before. And Thor said, I'm no heel biter, no cheap old shoe in the springtime. What were you doing in the meanwhile, Thor? And Thor said, fighting berserkers' brides on the inland Helsley. They had done evil things, assaulted everyone. And Greybeard said, how shameful of you, Thor, fighting women. And Thor said, they were wolves, hardly women. They broke my ship when I landed ashore, threatened me with iron rods, and chased my servant to Jolfi. What were you doing in the meanwhile, Greybeard? And Greybeard said, I was with an army. We came this way to wave some war banners and get some spears bloody. And Thor said, Now you're saying you came to do the gods evil. And Greybeard said, I'll give you this arm ring to make up for it. Fair judges would say it's an equal value. And Thor said, where did you learn to spit out all these hateful words? I know I've never heard more awful talk. And Greybeard said, I learned this sort of talk from the old men who live in the forest of home. And Thor said, you give a good name to the burial mounds if you call them the forests of home. And Greybeard said, that's how I talk about such things. And Thor said, well, I'll repay you for this slander with a good beating if I can get across this ford. I think you'd howl louder than a wolf if you felt my hammer on you. And Greybeard said, your wife has a lover, Thor. You'll meet him if you go home. And then you'll really suffer. That one's a better target for your hammer. And Thor said, you are just lying at random, saying whatever will most anger me, you cowardly fool. I think you're lying. And Greybeard said, I think I'm telling the truth. But you're late completing your journey. You won't get home for a long time, even if you walk all day and night. And Thor said, Greybeard, you sissy, you're the one who's held me up. And Greybeard said, I didn't think that Thor would let some peasant hold him up on his journey. And Thor said, here's some advice. Row that boat over here to me. We'll stop this bickering, and you'll meet me face to face. And Greybeard said, get far away from here. You don't get to ride the ferry. And Thor said, then show me the way if you won't take me across. And Greybeard said, I won't deny that request. It's a long walk. Go to the tree trunk, then to the rock, then turn left till you reach Midgard. There, your mother, the earth, will meet you, and she'll show you the god's road to Asgard. And Thor said, can I get there today? And Greybeard said, I suspect if you travel hard, you could get there before sundown. And Thor said, I see this conversation is over. Since you've only answered with insults, I will pay you back for this delay if we ever meet again. And Greybeard said, go now and have a bad journey. I think I'll end there. Perhaps tomorrow we'll pick up with the Himskivita, the fetching of the cauldron. Ooh, that sounds fun. I will see you then. Oh, yeah. I figured out how to turn it off, if I can remember. There's the button. That one right there.